breaking news coming in at this hour from the United States. U.S. President Donald Trump's national security meeting has come to an end. Trump had convened a meeting with his national security team in the Situation Room. Officials expected at the meeting included Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard. Now, according to reports, the meeting lasted for over an hour. The meeting comes after Trump stepped up his rhetoric against Iran's supreme leader, sparking questions about possible U.S. military intervention. The U.S. president also declared earlier today that we, meaning the U.S., have control of Iran's skies without elaborating further. Reports claim Trump is seriously considering joining the war and launching a U.S. strike against Iran's nuclear facilities, especially its underground uranium enrichment facility in Fordo. Once again, the national security meeting has come to an end. Trump had convened a meeting with his national security team in the Situation Room. Officials who were expected at the meeting included Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard. And according to reports, the meeting lasted for over an hour. The meeting comes after Trump stepped up his rhetoric against Iran's supreme leader, sparking questions about possible U.S. military intervention. Let's talk to our correspondent, Susan Teherani, who's now joining us on the phone. Susan, do we know what was decided in this meeting, or do we have a communique from White House?
The meeting just ended, Eric, but what we do know is President Trump is considering a range of options, including potential U.S. strikes against Iran, as he met with those top advisors in the Situation Room. Officials are saying there is no decision yet. The president, who had been preparing for a diplomatic solution, now wants to ensure that under no circumstance Iran is able to develop its nuclear capabilities. Earlier, we heard from State Department spokesman Tammy Bruce. She said President Trump will be the sole person to decide what the U.S. does next in Iran. She said, quote, "We can take his word for his word," and said that he is the singular guiding hand for what will be occurring from this point forward. This is according to State Department spokesperson Tammy Bruce. We're going to get more information about what occurred in that National Security Council meeting, but nonetheless, as we're talking, there are U.S. fighter jets and fueling stations and planes on their way to the Middle East. Some of them have arrived, more to come.
Susan, still talking about what Tammy Bruce did say, that the U.S. State Department has established a Middle East task force to help coordinate support for U.S. citizens, diplomatic missions and personnel amid the conflict between Israel and Iran. Maybe you can tell us more about this task force?
Yes, this is the task force that the State Department has set up. It is basically, as you mentioned, for U.S. citizens to be in touch with U.S. officials, considering the fact that, of course, the Swiss embassy, which was the American interest section in Iran, has been closed for a few days now. So Iranian Americans really, if they are in Iran, they don't really have that kind of means to directly go to any location. And nonetheless, in other parts of the region, if the U.S. citizens need to contact in any way U.S. embassies or interest sections that are closed, then this task force is aimed to help with that.
Susan, what about the difference between, let me just call it the difference between President Trump and Tulsi Gabbard? Was that taken care of?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's a great way to put it. So we are now learning from reporters from the Wall Street Journal and Politico that President Trump had a Camp David meeting on June 8th, if you recall, and Tulsi Gabbard wasn't invited to that meeting. Now, what happens now? She's still the Director of National Security on the one hand, and on the other hand, President Trump on his plane recently, when asked by a reporter, that Tulsi Gabbard said that there isn't a direct threat from Iran's nuclear program, at least not now. There's not enough evidence that Iran is producing enough uranium for a nuclear weapon. He was asked about that because she testified this back in March. President Trump said, "I don't care what Tulsi says, what Gabbard says, we're doing what we're doing now." So it's not clear whether or not President Trump has received new intelligence in the past 24 hours or so, or if it's based on something else. But it appears that those negotiations and a hope to reach some kind of negotiated settlement to Iran's nuclear deal are now off the table.
If you're just joining us, that is our correspondent Susan Teherani. She's in New York, and U.S. President Donald Trump's national security meeting has ended. Trump had convened a meeting with his national security team in the Situation Room. Officials expected at the meeting included Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard. And according to reports, the meeting lasted for over an hour. The meeting comes after Trump stepped up his rhetoric against Iran's supreme leader, sparking questions about possible U.S. military intervention. We are still waiting for a communique from the White House.